Chelsea Jones has managed the same restaurant for 11 years, held her staff together through every crisis, and smiled at every table, because falling apart at work was never an option. Falling apart at home was a different story. For 3 years, she has kept Michael's belongings exactly where he left them, touching nothing, moving on from nothing. Then the bank sends its final notice. Selling the house is not something Chelsea is willing to consider. This home is the last living piece of Michael she has left, and no foreclosure notice is going to take that from her. So she builds a plan. One room goes to a long-term housemate. The other gets listed on a short-term rental app. Strangers passing through. Money coming in. Michael's memory undisturbed. That is when she finds it, a sealed envelope tucked inside his old jacket while clearing space, addressed to her in his handwriting. She had no idea he ever wrote it. She sets it aside. She is not ready. Rob Smith steps out of a rideshare with a ring box in his pocket and a future already mapped out. Tall, dangerously handsome, quietly certain. He has no idea his life is 24 hours from collapse. One grieving woman protecting everything she loves. One unsuspecting man about to lose everything he planned for. And one letter, sitting on a table, already changing everything. Before we continue this story, quick shout out to Judith Thompson. That comment on our last video? It traveled. Someone saw it, reached out, and said, "That is me. I want people to hear my story." So today's story came straight from this community. One honest comment gave someone else the courage to speak up. That is exactly what this space is for. Drop your thoughts below. You never know whose courage you might spark. If you are new here, subscribe and hit that like button now. Because by the end of this story, trust me, you will forget to come back and do it. Chelsea had rules. They were not written down anywhere because she had never needed to write them down. This was her house, her kitchen, her carefully maintained order, and for 3 years not a single soul had been present to violate any of it. Rob Smith violated 3 of them before 8 in the morning. He had rearranged the mugs. Not dramatically, not maliciously, just nudged them to the left side of the shelf to make room for the sleek black travel kettle he had apparently brought from home, as though her kitchen were a hotel room missing an amenity. Then he had moved the dish rack. Then, somehow, he had found the good coffee, Michael's coffee, the expensive ground blend she kept at the back of the second shelf and never touched because opening it felt like using something that was not hers to use anymore. And he had brewed an entire pot of it without asking, without knowing, without the faintest idea what he had just done. Chelsea stood in the kitchen doorway in her work clothes and said nothing for a long moment. Rob turned from the counter with 2 mugs and the easy, unhurried confidence of a man who had never once considered that he might be standing in the wrong place. He held one out toward her. She looked at it, then at him. "You moved my mugs," she said. "I needed space for my kettle. This is not a shared kitchen in the sense that you rearrange it." He set her mug down on the counter, calm as anything. "I can move them back. Please." He moved them back. She watched. He was precise about it, which irritated her more than carelessness would have. Then he turned, leaned against the counter, and took a slow sip from his mug. His expression shifted, just slightly. Something uncertain crossing those composed features. "Is the coffee supposed to taste like this?" Chelsea looked at the pot. A thin curl of dark smoke was rising from the warming plate. In the distraction of the mug argument, the coffee had been sitting on full heat long enough to scorch itself into something closer to tar than anything drinkable. She looked at Rob. Rob looked at the pot. Then, despite everything, despite the mugs and Michael's coffee and the audacity of this man and his travel kettle, Chelsea laughed. A short, reluctant, completely genuine laugh that surprised her more than it surprised him. Rob smiled. Slow and quiet, like he had been waiting for it. She picked up her mug, took one sip, winced hard, and set it back down. "I'll stop for coffee on the way in." "Probably wise," he said. "I'll replace the bag." She grabbed her keys without answering. But she did not tell him to move the kettle. Before we get into the rest of Chelsea and Rob's story, I want to see how far our community reaches today. Drop a comment below and tell me, where in the world are you watching from? I love seeing all the different places you guys are tuning in from. The morning Rob planned to propose started the way all the best days do, quietly, without warning anything was wrong. He had rehearsed it twice in the mirror. The restaurant was booked. The ring was in his jacket pocket, right where it had been for 11 days. He was the kind of man who planned everything carefully and trusted that careful planning was enough. He had no reason to believe today would be any different. His phone rang at 9:30. Not her. Daniel, his oldest friend, the one who only called when something had already gone too far to fix with a text. Rob answered on the second ring. What Daniel said next did not arrive all at once. It came in pieces, a name, a place, a timeline stretching back 7 months. His girlfriend. A man from her office. Weekends Rob assumed she was visiting her sister. Photographs Daniel had been sitting on for 3 weeks, sick with the knowledge, trying to find the right moment to destroy his best friend's life. There was no right moment. There never is. Rob stood at the window of the spare room Chelsea had rented him, this quiet, carefully preserved house that smelled faintly of someone else's memories, and he said almost nothing. That was the thing about men like Rob. The bigger the wound, the quieter they became. He hung up. He sat on the edge of the bed. He turned the velvet box over in his hands once, twice, and then set it on the nightstand like something that had belonged to a version of himself that no longer existed. Downstairs, Chelsea was getting ready for her shift. She had no idea that the composed, self-assured man she had let into her home was, at that precise moment, coming completely undone. The porch light was off. Chelsea noticed that first, the darkness, and then the shape of him sitting in it. Rob was in the chair closest to the steps, a glass of something amber resting on his knee, not drinking it so much as holding it. Like it was the only thing keeping his hands from having nothing to do. He didn't hear her come out. Or if he did, he didn't move. Chelsea almost went back inside. Almost. Instead, she sat down in the chair beside him, pulled her cardigan across her chest, and looked out at the same quiet street he was staring at. She didn't ask if he was okay. It was an obvious enough answer. They stayed like that for a while. The kind of silence that doesn't demand anything from either person. Then she said, quietly, 3 years ago tonight, I got the call about Michael. Rob turned his head slowly toward her. I don't usually say that out loud, she continued, eyes still forward. I just sit out here. Same chair. Same time. And wait for the night to be over. Rob said nothing for a long moment. Then he set his glass down on the porch rail, gently, as if he suddenly felt embarrassed by it. I'm sorry, he said. And he meant it in the way people mean it when words are genuinely the smallest thing they have to offer. Chelsea nodded slowly. What she did to you, she said, that is its own kind of loss. Don't let anyone tell you it isn't. Something shifted in his expression then, a loosening, almost imperceptible, around the jaw, behind the eyes. The particular relief of being seen by someone who is not trying to fix you. He didn't tell her everything that night. She didn't either. But somewhere between the hum of distant traffic and the soft rustle of the magnolia tree at the edge of the yard, the distance between two strangers contracted into something quieter and closer. Not romantic. Not yet. Something more fragile than that. The tentative warmth of two people who have both sat alone in the dark long enough to recognize it in each other. Chelsea went inside first. Rob stayed a little longer. Neither of them slept easily that night. Chelsea had told herself she did not care what Rob Smith did under her roof. He was a paying guest, a temporary arrangement, a line item in her budget that helped keep the lights on and Michael's memory undisturbed. She had repeated that to herself every morning for 2 weeks, the way a person repeats something they are not entirely sure they believe. Then Melissa happened. It started the way Melissa's schemes always started, slowly, then all at once. A Saturday evening, the kitchen smelling of something she had no business cooking, her hair down, her dress a decision. Rob had come in from a long day looking exactly the way he always looked, unhurried, slightly undone, the kind of handsome that felt almost unfair in ordinary light. Melissa had turned from the stove with a smile Chelsea had seen her use before. Calculated. Warm in the way that cold things sometimes appear warm right before they do damage. Chelsea stood in the doorway of her own kitchen and felt something move through her chest that she did not have a name for. Not concern. Not irritation. Something older and more inconvenient than either of those things. She watched Melissa laugh too easily at something Rob said. Watched her touch his arm, just briefly, just enough. Watched Rob smile the way polite men smile when they are being charmed and are too well-mannered to say so. Chelsea turned and walked back down the hall. She told herself it was none of her business. She made herself a cup of tea she did not drink. She sat in the chair by Michael's bookshelf and stared at the spine of a book she had not touched in 3 years. She did not look at the letter, but she thought about Rob for the first time in a way that frightened her. He did not mean to see them. That was the thing Chelsea would never quite be able to get past. Rob had not gone looking. The notices had simply slipped from the counter while he was helping her carry groceries in from the car, and 3 of them fanned out across the kitchen floor like a hand of cards nobody wanted to be dealt. He picked them up without a word, glanced at the figures, set them down quietly. He waited 2 days before he said anything. She almost respected him for that. He came to her on a Sunday evening while she was going over the restaurant's weekly numbers at the kitchen table. He sat down across from her, folded his hands, and laid it out simply, no theater, no pity in his voice. He had money sitting in an account doing nothing. He was not asking for equity, not asking for a stake, not asking for anything with a contract attached to it. Just a transfer. Whatever amount helped. She could pay it back whenever, no timeline, no interest, no conditions. A gift dressed up as a loan so she would not feel the weight of accepting it. Chelsea set her pen down very slowly. She told him, just as quietly, that this house was not a project. That Michael had worked 2 jobs for 11 years to hold on to it, that his hands had fixed the back porch steps and repainted the front door twice, and that no amount of well-meaning money from a man who had been sleeping down the hall for 3 weeks was going to turn any of that into a transaction. Rob did not argue. He just looked at her, steady, patient, like a man who already knew she was not really angry at him, and that, somehow, made it so much war. The night it finally broke open started over a photograph. Rob had been living in Chelsea's house for 3 weeks by then, long enough to know which floorboards creaked, which burner ran hot, and exactly how far he was allowed to go before she shut down and retreated behind that composed, unreadable half-smile she wore like armor. He had respected every unspoken boundary. Until that Tuesday evening, when he moved Michael's framed photograph off the kitchen counter to make room for the groceries he had brought home, and Chelsea walked in and saw it sitting face down on the side table like something disposable. She did not raise her voice. That was the thing about Chelsea. She never raised her voice. She simply went very still, and the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Put it back. Rob set the grocery bag down slowly. I wasn't disrespecting him. I just needed the space to put it back. He put it back. And then, because he was tired and human and had been watching her disappear into this house like a woman determined to finish grieving herself out of existence, he said the thing he had promised himself he would never say. Chelsea, he is gone. And you are still here. This whole house, every surface, every corner, it's a shrine. And you are the one trapped inside it. What followed was not clean or quiet. She told him he had no idea what he was talking about. He told her she was using Michael's memory as a reason to never risk anything again. She told him to mind his own life since his own life had just fallen apart spectacularly. That landed. He went quiet. She regretted it immediately, but was too proud to say so. They stood there in the kitchen, breathing hard, two people who had said too much and meant most of it. Then Chelsea turned to leave and Rob reached out to catch her arm, just to stop her, just to say wait, and she turned back faster than either of them expected. Suddenly there was almost no space between them. His hand still on her arm, her eyes searching his face for something she was not ready to name. Neither of them moved. The photograph of Michael watched from the counter. Chelsea stepped back first, but it took her a long moment to do it. The morning of Chelsea's birthday arrived the way it always did, unannounced, unwelcome, and carrying more weight than any single day had a right to carry. She had stopped celebrating 3 years ago. Not a conscious decision, more a quiet surrender, because the last person who had ever made her birthday feel like something worth marking was Michael. He had understood the ritual of it. The flowers on the kitchen counter before she was even awake. The way he said her name that morning like it meant something different than every other day. Without him, the date felt less like a beginning and more like a reminder of everything that had ended. So Chelsea did what she always did. She went to work, kept her head down, told nobody, and came home intending to let the evening swallow itself whole. What she had not planned for was Rob. She found the back porch transformed, candles lined along the railing, 2 plates of food that smelled like he had spent the better part of the afternoon in her kitchen, soft music drifting from his phone resting against a plant pot. Nothing extravagant. Nothing loud. Just warmth and light, and the quiet refusal of a man who had decided she did not get to disappear tonight. "How did you even know?" she asked. He shrugged, the way he did when he was pretending something cost him less than it did. "You left your driving license on the counter last week." She laughed despite herself. The sound surprised her. They ate slowly, talked easily, and somewhere between the second glass of wine and a story Chelsea had not told anyone in years, the night stopped feeling like something to survive and started feeling like something else entirely. She talked about Michael, the good memories, the ones she usually kept locked away because sharing them with the wrong person felt like giving something sacred to someone who had not earned it. Rob listened the way he did everything. Fully. Without hurry. Without trying to fix what did not need fixing. When the candles burned low, she realized she had not once checked the time. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I didn't know I needed this." Rob looked at her in the candlelight and said nothing for a moment. "I know," he said finally. "That's why I did it." The Sunday barbecue was Chelsea's idea. That surprised everyone who knew her, her sous chef Darnell, who had not seen her laugh without effort in 3 years. Her best friend Renee, who had quietly stopped suggesting gatherings because the answer was always not yet. Even Rob, who had spent 6 weeks in that house learning to read every variation of Chelsea's silence, looked up from the grill with something close to disbelief when she came outside that morning with a playlist already running and a bowl of her mother's potato salad balanced in both hands. "You did not make that from scratch," he said. "Michael's recipe," she said. "Don't make it a thing." He didn't. He just turned back to the grill and smiled at the smoke. The yard filled slowly, the way good things do, Renee arriving first with wine and too many opinions, Darnell bringing his youngest, who immediately claimed the garden hose as his personal property. A few neighbors Chelsea had not spoken to in longer than she wanted to admit. Rob moved through all of it with the quiet ease she had stopped being suspicious of, refilling drinks, finding chairs, learning names the first time he heard them. He had a gift for making people feel like the room had been waiting for them. Chelsea had noticed that about him early. She had resented it for exactly 2 weeks before she stopped being able to. The letter was still in the safe. She had read it on a Thursday evening 3 weeks ago alone, with the bedroom door closed. Michael had written it 6 months before he died, not as a goodbye, but as a permission. "You were never meant to stop," he had written in that steady, deliberate hand she would have known anywhere. "The best thing I ever did was love you. The second best thing I can do is make sure you don't let that be the last love you ever let in." She had sat with those words for a long time. Then she had walked downstairs, where Rob was reading in the kitchen, and she had said quietly, without drama, "I think I am ready." He had looked up. He had not asked ready for what. He already knew. Now the yard was full of noise and smoke and late afternoon gold, and Chelsea Jones was laughing, not the careful, managed kind she kept for other people, but the real kind, the kind that cost something. Michael would have loved this. She thought that without pain, for the first time. And that felt like the beginning of everything. Story found something in you today. That feeling is exactly why this channel exists, because real love is not always young, and it almost never arrives on schedule, but it always deserves to be honored. If Chelsea felt familiar in a way you were not expecting, sit with that. Hit the subscribe button so the next story that was meant for you finds you right on time. If she moved you today, hit the like button and tell me in the comments what you felt, what you are still carrying, or what you are finally ready to put down. Because somewhere out there, someone is going to read your words, just like Judith's, and find the courage they did not know they were looking for.